welcome everybody. Now, how do you plan on being at the parish tomorrow?
We are.
Okay, because I don't, what I want to do, I have like a normal talk that I give like at the parishes, and I, go, usually I'm just at one parish for a day and then I go to another parish. But I was thinking, since this is like a private chapel and it's, many of you are in the same parish, I guess. Tomorrow I'm going to give my usual talk, but I thought I could just maybe talk a little bit and then field questions. If anybody has questions, I'll try my best to answer either about the travels of the statue or about the message of Fatima. I've studied a lot about the message of Fatima, not everything, but I've read an awful lot. And I've written a book called the Marion Manifesto, which I try to the best of my ability to help people understand what the message of Fatima is, how and why this message is going to change the world. When Our Lady speaks about God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart, and this devotion is going to bring peace to the world, in order to save them. We're talking about people going to hell and the destruction in the world that they're causing. In order to save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. So somehow that devotion is going to bring peace to this world, and there's many reasons why this is like an advancement in some ways of understanding of devotion, of our faith. You might have heard it, our time kind of referred to as the Age of Mary. Since about 1830, when Our Lady appeared to St. Catherine Labouré in Paris, and from that moment forward, this era that we're living in has been referred to as the Age of Mary. And there's several other Marian apparitions. Fatima is very integral in that series of appearances that Mary has made. And she seemed very concerned, like in this image of Mary was done precisely according to the description of Sister Lucia. Lucia said, this is the way Our Lady appeared. She didn't have a crown on her head, and she wasn't always holding a rosary and scapular, but these other details are all according to Lucia's description. One of them is this kind of like a marble ball. People often ask me, what does that represent? Well, we don't know exactly, because Mother Mary never explained what that means. But the commentators have all kind of said that this refers to Our Lady's concern for the whole world, that she is concerned about the whole world. And this star that's on her shin was also there present. Again, Our Lady did not explain what that star represents. Many commentators believe that star makes reference to an Old Testament person who is in the book of Esther, the Old Testament, the book of Esther. The name Esther means star. And if you know that story in the book of Esther, Esther was a queen who saved her people from destruction. You might have remembered the story that she had to go before the king, and she was risking her life, just simply presenting herself to the king to ask for his favor. And in that she said that her people were in danger of being exterminated. And her intercession saved her people from destruction. And so many commentators believe that star represents Our Lady is going to save us from destruction. And we're living in a time right now, many of you are old enough to remember growing up, and you had the concerns about a nuclear war and what to do in the case of an atomic bomb explosion. Well, all of a sudden, we seem to be back in that era. We're very concerned about a nuclear war with Russia. Well, you might know of there was the third part of the secret of Fatima, and it's primarily a vision. There's only 3 words that are spoken, and it's the same word repeated: penance, penance, penance. And that's not even spoken by Our Lady. Those 3 words are spoken by an angel with a flaming sword. He's getting ready to strike the earth with this sword. He's prevented by the light that radiates from Our Lady. He cannot strike the earth because there is this light emanating from Our Lady. When he's prevented from making this effort, he points with his other hand, points to the earth, and shouts out, penance, penance, penance. And then from that's where we see, it's like the vision turns into a second part, where the children saw a whole cadre of people, mostly church people, wearing church garb, being led by a bishop in white, which the children explicitly said they believed that was the Holy Father. This bishop in white leading this whole cadre of church people up a very difficult route up a mountain. And this route led through a city in ruins, and they get to the top of this mountain, and at the top of this mountain is a rough-looking cross. And when they get there, all of a sudden, some are shot with shot when one who is shot is this bishop in white, and he falls to the ground, apparently killed. And then there, below the arms of this cross, are 2 angels, and they take the blood of these martyrs, they put it in what's called an aspersorium, which is used by priests to sprinkle, but this time it's blood. It's the blood of the martyrs, and those angels follow that path back down and sprinkle all the people that are trying to make their way following the Holy Father up this difficult way. So this is a clear reference to the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, a famous saying of Tertullian, early church father. He said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. The church depends upon those who have gone before them and suffered the difficulties of the gospel. And of course, the message of Fatima, the very first major request that Our Lady asked of the 3 children was, are you willing to offer yourselves to God and accept all the sufferings God will send you in order to save souls, make reparation for sin to God? And those kids, they said, yes, we are willing. And then Our Lady said, well, then you will have much to suffer, but the grace of God will be your comfort. And Our Lady actually then showed them what that's like. She opens up her hands, and the light that's radiating from her shoots like beams from the palms of her hands. Those beams penetrate those children, and they sensed immediately that light that came from her was God, the grace of God. Not just the grace of God, they just said, that's God. The light was God. Now, that accepting that willingness, having that willingness to accept the sufferings that God wishes to send us is something that's beyond us naturally, right? It's something more than just willpower. We cannot just say, yes, I'm determined to accept all the sufferings God will send us. Well, one thing is for sure, when you're in the midst of suffering, you want it to end. It's not only the saints learn over a long period of time through the grace of God that how much of a blessing these sufferings are. Well, that's what Lucia ends up in the second apparition. She talks to Our Lady about her difficulty. I'm going, Our Lady lets her know that she's going to have to continue a long life. Her two cousins are going to be with her soon. But Lucia is going to have to carry on to make known in the world devotion to her Immaculate Heart. And she promises that her heart will become to Lucius like a refuge and the way that will lead us to God, lead her to God. And so this is really like the summary of the message. Devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary helps us to live out that difficult road that Jesus said, that narrow, rocky path that leads to eternal life, to take up our cross each day and follow after him. That this is what brings peace to the world, salvation to souls. It's really what we celebrate, in the Eucharist at Mass. Jesus is offering himself for our salvation, and he calls all of us to enter into that sacrifice, to offer ourselves united with him, communion, to enter into communion with him. So this is, it's not as you can see, it's not a new message. What Our Lady was reminding us of at Fatima is not a new message, but she is confirming how effective devotion to her Immaculate Heart is. Many of you probably have I'm going to just assume, all of you have been consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. You've consecrated your lives to her. A lot of this was promoted going back at least 300 years. St. Louis de Montfort promoted consecrating our lives to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And we can say at Fatima, about 100 years ago, more than 105 years ago now, that she confirmed that this is what St. Louis de Montfort said, the shortest, the surest, the shortest, the quickest, the most perfect of means to holiness. So she is going to be able to obtain for us all the graces that we need. She's mediatrix of all grace, all God's grace, to help us to maintain our stability, our firmness in that road that leads to eternal life. So I'm just going to, right now, I'm just going to open up for questions. I'm going to, if anybody has questions either about the message or about the travels of the statue. This week is October 13th. Precisely 75 years ago, October 13th, this statue was blessed by the bishop at Fatima and sent out on pilgrimage 75 years ago, 1947, October 13th. So this is, it's kind of a very special thing that we're here on that date. We're going to be at the shrine in Washington, New Jersey, celebrating the feast.
What about the statue that we have in Portugal and the Pilgrim Statue? Maybe.
Yes, the statue that remains at Portugal was made by the same artist that made this one. That was 1920, and Lucia was away from Fatima for a good number of years. People would go to pilgrimage there, and they would all want to see Lucia. The two others had passed away. They all wanted to see Lucia, and it was just too much for her. So the bishop arranged for her to go off to boarding school, and in a way that her identity wasn't even known. So they would put her into a boarding school, even in Spain, in another country, and so it was a tremendous suffering. You can't imagine how much of a suffering that is. But she spent 2.5 decades away from Fatima. After the war, the Second World War, she travels back to Fatima for the first time since all those years, and she sees that 1920 image for the very first time, and she makes the comment that it's a good likeness, but there's some details that aren't quite right. And when the bishop, this word Lucia made, got to the bishop, And he said, have Lucia get together with the artist, have them make another image precisely according to her description. That became the Pilgrim Statue. With that, then those details, some of them are what I mentioned about in the original, it's a tassel. And I don't think there's any star. And the sleeves kind of hang down a little bit. And then there's this trim is like a very ornate trim. She said all the corrections that she made, what you see here is more precisely what Our Lady looked like. And then we add the crown because also what happened in 1946, that was following, World War II ended 1945, summer of 1945. Well, and the word or the knowledge about Fatima did not really go very far until after the war, maybe some during the war. But following the war, the whole church learned about Fatima, including Pope Pius XII, who was the Pope. He made the comment in 1946, well, he determined that Our Lady of Fatima should be crowned Queen of the World. He sent a papal legate to Fatima, carrying a crown. He crowned the image of Our Lady of Fatima as Queen of the World, precisely because of how prophetic the message was, that that if people do not change their lives, there'll be a second worst war, and that Russia will spread her heirs throughout the world. Well, that became obvious by 1946. This was definitely happening. Our Lady of Fatima was very prophetic. So he crowns Our Lady of Fatima Queen of the World. And then the following year, 1947, this image is made and sent out on pilgrimage. And later on, Pope Pius made a comment in a radio presentation. He said, in 1946, we crowned Our Lady of Fatima as Queen of the World, and the following year, she went forth in her pilgrim image as if to claim her domain. And the wonders she performs along the way are such that we can hardly believe what our eyes are witnessing. So this later on, I have a predecessor, Louis Kazmarek, who wrote a book called The Wonders She Performs. He was the custodian back in the 70s and the 80s. And in that book, he talks about some of the things that happened in the travels. And the most amazing thing that happened in his travels with the image were when he went behind the Iron Curtain. There's really remarkable things that happened when he had Our Lady behind the Iron Curtain in Poland and Slovakia and these places. I don't think the book is in print anymore, but a lot of people have been able to find it, like on Amazon and that. Any questions?
Nothing. Very good.
Sure.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Very good, thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Can you bless this? No, you don't need to. Just bless them. Thank you, Father. You want one, Father? Wow.
That's the white one. You don't have it. No, the first. Really good at COVID, you don't change it. That's the same.
Yung anak niyo.
Is that the traveling Madonna? Like a traveling Madonna? How'd you get it?
What's that, Kuya?
I don't want to walk out during the mass.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I know. You were done, right?
Sure of that.
We've been here since this morning.
Yeah, we've been here since.
Have a safe ride home.
Going on up?